Carl Jung revealed why the spiritually awake don't like visitors. Solitude is not the absence of energy, but the presence of clarity. Carl Jung. Have you ever wondered why those who are spiritually awake often guard their silence and prefer solitude over constant company? In today's video on spiritual wisdom, we'll explore Carl Jung's profound revelation about why awakened souls don't like visitors, not because they are antisocial, but because they understand the sacred architecture of energy and the power of inner space. As you listen, reflect on how your own energy feels around others and within your private space. Do you recharge in stillness or lose yourself in noise? Share your experience in the comments. Your insight might awaken someone else's understanding. 1. Solitude isn't brokenness, but awareness. Modern society glorifies constant connection, as if being surrounded by people is the ultimate proof of emotional health. Yet Carl Jung's spiritual wisdom reveals a truth that few dare to accept. Solitude isn't a sign of brokenness, but a reflection of deep awareness. Those who feel uncomfortable with constant company are not antisocial. They are energetically awake. They sense that every human interaction carries a vibration, and that energy can either nourish or drain the soul. The spiritually awakened understand that the home is more than walls and furniture. It is an energetic sanctuary, a sacred space where the spirit renews itself. Protecting that space is not rejection of others. It is an act of self-preservation for those who live in constant dialogue with their higher consciousness. When you begin your journey of spiritual awakening, you start to feel everything: emotions, thoughts, energies, with a sensitivity that others can't comprehend. The more aware you become, the more silence becomes medicine. Noise begins to feel heavy, crowds become exhausting, and meaningless conversations lose their charm. You no longer crave distraction, you crave depth. Jung called this process individuation, the integration of the conscious and unconscious, the merging of shadow and light. To achieve it, solitude becomes a mirror through which you can finally see your true self. It is within the stillness that your inner voice, once drowned out by the world's chaos, begins to speak again. The spiritually awake often retreat, not because they dislike humanity, but because they love it too deeply. They have learned that true connection is not measured by proximity, but by presence. When you are fully present, you can love someone from across oceans, pray for them in silence, and feel their soul without words. Solitude deepens that capacity. It becomes the sacred soil where empathy, clarity, and intuition bloom. When people enter your space without awareness, they bring their mental noise, emotional residue, and unconscious projections. For someone walking the path of awakening, this can feel like a sudden storm shaking the still water of the soul. That is why they guard their peace so carefully, not out of arrogance, but out of reverence for what silence reveals. Spirituality is not about isolation from the world, but about entering it from a place of alignment. The spiritually awake walk among people, but they do so with grounded energy and intentional boundaries. They have discovered that not every visitor deserves access to their sacred silence. Each encounter is an exchange of frequency, and awareness teaches them that some frequencies can distort their inner harmony. Solitude, therefore, is not loneliness. It is the art of returning home to oneself. In that home, there are no masks, no roles, no expectations, only presence, only truth. To those who live in constant noise, solitude may look like emptiness, but for the spiritually awakened soul, it is fullness, the pure experience of being one with existence. In that sacred stillness, they touch what Jung called the self, the divine center that holds all opposites in unity. They no longer need to fill the silence because the silence itself becomes the teacher. And in that vast inner space, life reveals its hidden rhythm, not through visitors or conversations, but through the quiet heartbeat of the soul that finally remembers its own divine sound. 2. Your home reflects your soul. A spiritually awake person understands that their home is not merely a structure made of bricks and walls. It is a living reflection of the soul, a sacred mirror of one's inner world. Every room, every object, every scent and sound vibrates with the energy of its inhabitant. To allow someone to enter that space is to open the door to your psyche, to let another consciousness brush against your energetic field. That is why those who are deeply engaged in spirituality and spiritual development are careful about who crosses their threshold. It is not that they dislike people, it is that they feel everything. They sense the invisible weight others carry, the unspoken emotions, the residual energy that lingers in their aura. When such energy enters a peaceful space, it can quietly disturb the stillness that has taken years to cultivate. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." To become that true self requires silence, solitude, and spiritual discipline. The spiritually awake understand that constant company, idle chatter, and the presence of restless minds can blur the boundaries of one's sacred center. They know that the home is not just a place to sleep. It is an energetic container, a sanctuary for the soul's alignment. When visitors come and go carelessly, they leave behind energetic fingerprints, subtle vibrations that can dull intuition and scatter focus. That is why solitude is not a symptom of loneliness, but a necessity for clarity. In solitude, the soul breathes, reorganizes, and restores its natural rhythm. Every spiritually awake person eventually learns that the environment they live in reflects their internal world. A cluttered home mirrors a restless mind. A serene, orderly space reflects an awakened consciousness that has learned to let go. As one deepens in spirituality, they begin to crave simplicity, clean air, soft light, and meaningful stillness. This isn't about minimalism for aesthetic purposes. It is a sacred design of energetic harmony. When your spirit is balanced, your home naturally becomes a temple. When you are anxious or lost, the space around you mirrors that disarray. Spiritual development, therefore, is not confined to meditation cushions or sacred texts. It extends into how you choose to arrange, protect, and inhabit your physical space. People often mistake the spiritually awake for being aloof or detached, but what they are truly doing is preserving the sacred current of their energy. They understand that every human exchange is an exchange of vibration, and some energies are too heavy for the soul to carry. They prefer quiet moments over crowded gatherings because silence sharpens their connection to the divine. To them, peace is not a luxury, it is oxygen. Protecting the home becomes an act of devotion, a way of honoring the divine order that keeps their inner and outer worlds aligned. When they close the door behind them, it is not rejection, it is reverence. They are preserving the atmosphere where prayer, creativity, and healing can thrive without intrusion. To live this way is to embody spiritual maturity. It means understanding that everything around you either nourishes or drains your energy. When you walk into your home and feel immediate calm, it's a sign that your spirit and surroundings are in harmony. If you feel agitation, it's a signal that something in your inner world needs cleansing. The spiritually awake do not wait for chaos to knock. They sense the slightest disruption and move gently to restore equilibrium. They cleanse their space, not out of superstition, but because they know energy is real. Memory is stored in matter, and the soul feels safest in a space that vibrates with truth. This is the sacred relationship between your home and your soul. As one evolves, so does the other, until both become a unified reflection of divine stillness and spiritual light. Do you feel this truth in your soul? If you do, write it boldly in the comments. My home reflects my soul, and my energy shapes my space. 3. Masks and the social self. At home, you finally remove the mask you've been forced to wear all day. The polite smile, the agreeable tone, the careful words that help you survive in a world obsessed with performance. The moment you close the door behind you, you return to your natural state of being. The silence feels alive, the air softer, the energy lighter. But when someone visits, even for a short while, you instinctively feel the shift. You put the mask back on, unconsciously adjusting your posture, your tone, your thoughts. You begin performing again, as though your sacred sanctuary has become a stage. And that is why the spiritually awake often feel uneasy with visitors, because the presence of others, however kind, can quietly pull them away from authenticity and back into the exhausting dance of social expectations. Carl Jung's spiritual wisdom reveals that what we call the social self is not our true essence, but a construct we wear to interact with the world. He called it the persona, a necessary facade that allows us to function within society. Yet, for the spiritually awakened, this mask feels heavy. It doesn't just hide emotions, it conceals truth. When you live from your soul instead of your ego, even small acts of pretension feel like betrayal. You begin to crave environments where you can exist without adjusting, explaining, or filtering who you are. That's why home becomes sacred. It is the one place where you can lay down the armor, release the tension in your body, and allow your inner energy to expand freely without being observed or misunderstood. Every human carries an energetic frequency, and when visitors enter your space, their energy interacts with yours. The spiritually awake can sense this instantly: the mood, the intention, even the subtle emotional residue people bring with them. Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." And yet, when the energies around you are dense or chaotic, your peace becomes fragile. It's not arrogance or avoidance, it's energetic hygiene. Just as you wouldn't invite dirt into a freshly cleaned room, the awakened soul becomes careful about who enters their energetic field. The home turns into a temple, a place not for performance, but for purification, where the soul rests and regenerates after facing the noise of the world. In this space, you learn the rare art of authenticity. You learn that solitude is not loneliness, it is intimacy with your own soul. You begin to understand why your spirit grows tired after too much social contact, why you need silence to breathe, and why the sound of your own thoughts brings more comfort than the chatter of a crowd. Spiritual awakening sharpens your awareness of what nourishes and what depletes you. You realize that protecting your peace is not selfish. It is sacred. Because in your solitude, you don't escape life. You return to it more consciously, more whole, and more aligned with truth. If you believe this truth speaks to your soul, repeat after me. I remove every mask and return to my true self. I live from my spirit, not my social self. 4. Energy sources differ. Extroverts draw their energy from the world, thriving on interaction, movement, and external stimulation. But those who walk the path of spiritual awakening are fueled by a different source: silence. For them, solitude is not loneliness, it is nourishment. In silence, they recharge the energy that the outer world constantly drains. Carl Jung, a master of spiritual wisdom, once observed that loneliness does not come from being alone, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important. This understanding lies at the heart of the spiritually awake mind. Such individuals are not avoiding others. They are protecting something precious: their energy, their inner frequency, their sacred connection to the divine. When the spiritually awake spend time alone, they are not retreating from life, but returning to the essence of it, realigning with their own vibration so they can meet the world from a place of clarity, strength, and truth. Visitors, however kind or loving, carry their own energy, a mix of emotions, thoughts, and unseen frequencies that enter one space like invisible waves. For someone who is spiritually sensitive, every visit leaves a subtle imprint. After interacting with others, they may feel emotionally heavy or mentally scattered, not because the people were negative, but because their finely tuned energy field absorbed too much external noise. To restore balance, they need solitude the way lungs need air. In stillness, their nervous system recalibrates, their aura cleanses, and their spirit rises again to its natural rhythm. It is not that they dislike visitors. It is that their soul requires long intervals of quiet to maintain harmony. A spiritually awakened person treats their home as an extension of their soul. Not just four walls filled with possessions, but a temple of energy. Every sound, every color, every corner holds vibration. This is why constant company or unnecessary visits can disturb the sacred equilibrium they've built. The spiritually awake know that peace is not something that happens by chance. It must be protected intentionally. They arrange their surroundings with purpose, cleanse their space energetically, and keep it free from emotional clutter. After all, the home of an awakened soul is not a place of entertainment, but a sanctuary of light, reflection, and restoration. Spiritual awakening transforms one's relationship with energy. You begin to see that every interaction, no matter how small, is an exchange of vibration. Conversations, even casual ones, can leave subtle residues in your emotional field. The awakened understand that maintaining spiritual clarity requires the same care as tending a sacred fire. Too much disturbance, and the flame flickers. Too much exposure, and the warmth fades. This is why they often prefer silence over small talk, solitude over crowds, presence over performance. They do not need constant validation or attention because their energy no longer depends on external sources. It flows from within. Carl Jung's insight into human consciousness revealed that individuation, the process of becoming whole, requires withdrawal from collective noise. The spiritually awake embody this principle. In solitude, They access higher states of awareness and hear the whisper of divine guidance. In silence, they meet their true self, the one unshaken by opinion, untouched by chaos, and unwavering in truth. Solitude becomes their sacred medicine, their form of spiritual self-care. Those who misunderstand this think of them as aloof or distant, but in truth, they are simply attuned to the delicate balance between energy and peace. To love others deeply, they must first remain grounded in themselves. Visitors may see an empty room, but the spiritually awake see sacred space, a place alive with unseen presence. They are not isolating themselves from the world. They are cultivating inner stillness so that when they do return to it, they bring light rather than noise, presence rather than pretense. This is the essence of spirituality, learning to preserve the energy that sustains your soul, to guard your sacred temple within, and to honor the truth that silence is not emptiness, but the purest form of connection to the divine. Don't forget to subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom for more insights on how energy shapes your reality and how understanding different energy sources can completely transform the way you connect, create, and live. 5. The shadow and inner protection. Resistance to visitors often reveals a deeper, sacred instinct within the psyche, a kind of subconscious wisdom that arises naturally in the process of spirituality and spiritual development. When your inner world is undergoing transformation, even a simple intrusion can feel like someone bumping a table that holds an unfinished puzzle. It's not about disliking others, but about protecting the fragile inner alignment that allows clarity and peace to unfold. Your mind, like a still lake, reflects truth only when it is undisturbed. Every visitor, no matter how kind, brings with them unseen energies, emotional currents, and projections that ripple through that stillness. The spiritually awake soul understands this sensitivity and thus guards their space as a sacred temple, not out of isolation, but out of reverence for their own unfolding truth. As Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes." The act of looking within demands stillness, and stillness requires boundaries. When you are constantly surrounded by others talking, entertaining, reacting, your perception dulls, your intuition weakens, and your inner voice grows faint. You begin to absorb energies that do not belong to you, and soon your own essence feels diluted. The awakened person knows that silence is not emptiness. It is the birthplace of understanding. Solitude is where the invisible work of spiritual development happens, where wounds surface to be healed and the fragmented self begins to integrate. It is the private laboratory of the soul, where insight is born not from noise, but from listening deeply to the silence within. Your home, too, becomes an energetic reflection of your inner world. It's not just four walls. It's the outer shell of your consciousness, holding memories, emotions, and frequencies that mirror your state of being. When you invite people in casually, their energy mingles with yours, subtly altering the atmosphere. A spiritually attuned person senses this immediately. The air feels heavier, the thoughts become cloudy, and the flow of energy shifts. That's why they guard their environment as carefully as a monk tends his temple. It's not about being antisocial. It's about preserving the sanctity of their own vibration, ensuring that the space remains aligned with peace and higher awareness. They know that every thought, every object, every presence carries frequency, and frequency is what shapes reality. The truth is, those who walk the path of awakening begin to understand that inner work cannot be done in chaos. Their solitude is not an escape, but a sacred practice. In solitude, they recharge, recalibrate, and realign with divine order. The absence of others becomes a presence of something greater: truth, harmony, and the subtle pulse of higher consciousness. The psyche, knowing its own needs, builds invisible walls of protection to preserve the process. It whispers to you through intuition when you need quiet, urging you to step away from the world so your soul can breathe. And in honoring that call, you learn one of the deepest truths of spirituality. Protecting your peace is not selfish, it is sacred. It is how your soul reminds you that growth requires space and healing requires silence. 6. The sacred symbolism of space. Your home is not merely a shelter built of walls and furniture. It is a living reflection of your soul. In the language of spiritual wisdom, it is the temple of your inner world, a sacred sanctuary that holds your energy, emotions, and silence. Allowing someone to step into this space is never just a social act. It is a spiritual exchange, a merging of energies that leaves invisible footprints on your soul's atmosphere. That is why the spiritually awake often find themselves uneasy when visitors come without alignment. It isn't about pride or coldness. It's about vibration. As Carl Jung taught, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. Every person who enters your home carries unseen frequencies of joy, fear, restlessness, or peace. And when they enter, they don't just sit on your couch, they sit in your energy. Spiritually awake, individuals understand this instinctively. They feel the subtle shifts in air, the weight of a conversation, the way the atmosphere thickens or brightens after someone leaves. They know that the home absorbs emotions like the earth absorbs rain, holding both nourishment and residue. Jung often described the psyche as a house with many rooms, some filled with light, others hidden in shadow, and a visitor can unknowingly stir what sleeps in those corners. That's why silence and solitude feel sacred. They are the soul's way of returning to equilibrium after contact. For those who live with deep awareness, solitude is not loneliness, but sacred maintenance. It is cleansing the temple after the crowd has gone. You start to see that your home's energy mirrors your inner state. When your space is calm, so is your mind. When it's cluttered with noise or heavy energy, your thoughts become restless. The spiritually awake protect their environment because they understand that every object, every scent, every sound carries a frequency that shapes consciousness. They choose who enters not out of judgment, but out of stewardship. To them, every visit is an energetic ceremony and an exchange that should honor both souls involved. In spiritual wisdom, this is called energetic sovereignty, the ability to remain the guardian of your own vibration. When you begin to awaken, you stop entertaining out of obligation and start preserving out of reverence. You realize that your peace is the foundation of your purpose. Jung reminded us, who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. And looking inside requires stillness, something constant visitors disrupt. The spiritually awake crave this stillness, not to escape life, but to meet it more consciously. They know that every time someone steps into their home, the energy shifts. and it takes time to restore the sacred harmony. That's why their solitude is not isolation. It's devotion to clarity, depth, and authenticity. To understand this is to realize that your space is not just where you live, it's where your soul breathes. So, when you feel reluctant to open your door, trust that inner whisper. It's your intuition reminding you that not every presence deserves entry into your temple. Protecting your space is not selfish. It is spiritual maturity. It is honoring the invisible currents that shape your peace. And when you preserve that peace, you preserve your connection to the divine. If this truth about sacred space has touched your spirit today, comment below. My space is sacred, and I protect it with peace and wisdom. 7. Solitude as a spiritual practice. Choosing solitude is not selfishness, but a profound act of spiritual wisdom. Those who have experienced true spiritual awakening understand that the deepest transformation, healing, and communion with the divine do not occur amidst constant conversation or crowded rooms, but in silence within the sacred stillness where the soul can finally hear itself. Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes." This truth reveals why the spiritually awake often retreat from social noise. Solitude is not loneliness. It is where you return home to your own essence, where the layers of conditioning fall away and the authentic self begins to breathe again. In a world that glorifies endless connection, the awakened soul chooses stillness, for it knows that silence is not empty. It is full of answers, full of light, full of divine presence. The spiritually awakened person understands that energy is real, and every visitor brings an energetic imprint. After awakening, you begin to sense that some presences calm your soul, while others disturb your peace. Jung believed that we all share a collective unconscious, a vast ocean of unseen energies and emotions that flow between people. When you are spiritually awake, you feel this exchange intensely. Visitors who come with unresolved emotions, heavy intentions, or chaotic energy can disrupt your balance. So the awakened one withdraws not from love, but from energetic contamination. Their solitude is sacred maintenance, a way to cleanse the mind, purify the aura, and return to divine alignment. In this space of quiet, the spiritually awakened soul hears what the noise of the world drowns out, the soft whisper of intuition, the guidance of spirit, the clarity that only solitude can reveal. This is why spiritually evolved souls prefer fewer visitors, for their energy field becomes like a delicate instrument, vibrating in harmony with truth and authenticity. When lower vibrations enter, it feels like static interrupting a divine melody. Protecting their peace becomes a form of prayer. They no longer feel obligated to entertain, explain, or adjust themselves to fit the expectations of others. Jung wrote, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you." Those who live in deep spiritual awareness often find that most people cannot understand the language of silence, energy, or depth. Their solitude is not born from sadness, it is born from sensitivity. For them, silence is communion. They walk in the awareness that everything is energy, and every interaction leaves an imprint. To remain aligned with divine purpose, they choose solitude as both shield and sanctuary. They are not running away from the world. They are recharging to serve it better. In solitude, they meet the self that Jung spoke of, the divine spark beyond ego. beyond masks, beyond the roles society demands. They learn that peace is not found in the presence of people, but in the absence of noise. And as they grow, they no longer chase connection for validation, but attract only those who match their frequency. So when the spiritually awake close their doors to visitors, it is not rejection, it is reverence. It is their way of preserving the vibration that allows them to see clearly, love deeply, and live truthfully. They understand that every moment spent in stillness expands consciousness and strengthens the bridge between the human and the divine. Solitude becomes their temple, their teacher, their medicine. It is where spirituality becomes real, where awareness deepens, where the heart remembers its original rhythm, and where the awakened soul rests in the quiet embrace of the universe. 8. Protecting energy is self-love. Saying no to visitors is not rejection. It is a sacred act of self-respect, the highest form of self-love in spirituality and spiritual development. When you are on the path of awakening, your soul begins to value peace more than company, silence more than conversation, and solitude more than social approval. You realize that not everyone deserves access to your energy, because energy is your most valuable currency. What you give away carelessly drains your light, but what you protect intentionally multiplies your strength. Carl Jung understood this deeply when he spoke of the hermit's lantern, that quiet, unwavering light symbolizing the soul's inner truth. The hermit retreats not out of fear, but to keep his flame alive, to let wisdom grow in silence. Likewise, when you close your door and choose solitude over noise, you are not isolating yourself from the world, you are reuniting with your higher self. In those moments of stillness, your spirit recalibrates, your intuition strengthens, and your awareness expands. The spiritually developed understand that their inner world is a sacred temple, and not everyone is meant to enter. Each uninvited visitor or unnecessary conversation is like opening the temple doors to dust and distraction. To protect your boundaries is to say to the universe, I honor the light within me. This act of preservation is not selfish. It is love in its purest form. Jung once said, who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. Looking within requires courage, silence, and sacred space. And so, every time you choose solitude over company, reflection over reaction, peace over chaos, you are nurturing your spiritual development. You begin to see that true connection arises only when your own cup is full, when your spirit has rested and your energy has been cleansed. Protecting your solitude allows your light to grow, so that when you do connect with others, it comes from abundance, not depletion. The lesson is simple but powerful. Guard your energy as you would guard your life. For your peace is not a luxury, it is your foundation. In spirituality, learning to say no is a divine yes to your own growth. Boundaries are not barriers. They are gates of self-respect that keep your spirit safe while it blossoms. So let the hermit within you hold his lantern high in the quiet night of the soul. For in that sacred stillness, you are not alone. You are illuminated from within. And that's the truth Jung wanted us to remember. Solitude isn't a sign of disconnection. It's a sign of deeper connection to your soul. When you begin to protect your energy, your space, and your peace, you stop living by society's noise and start living by divine rhythm. So the next time you find yourself craving silence instead of company, know that it's not loneliness, it's spiritual alignment. If this message spoke to your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss another insight that helps you grow, heal, and awaken your inner light. You're more healed than you think. Carl Jung once said, "The shoe that fits one person pinches another." There is no recipe for living that suits all cases. Healing works the same way it unfolds quietly, uniquely, and often without you even realizing it. Sometimes, the very peace you feel today is the proof of the battles you've already won. In this video, we'll explore the subtle, hidden signs that you've grown far more than you think. So as you watch, reflect on your own journey. What moment showed you that your spirit has already begun to heal? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and let's inspire one another on this path of spiritual wisdom and awakening. 1. Comfort in solitude. When you no longer fear being alone with your thoughts, you've entered one of the quietest and most profound stages of healing. There's a calm that comes when you stop chasing distractions and learn to find peace in your own company. This isn't loneliness, it's recognition. It's the moment when you realize that your mind is no longer an enemy, but a companion, and silence has become sacred instead of unbearable. Carl Jung once said that people will do anything to avoid facing their own souls, and yet here you are, sitting with yours without resistance. That is the essence of spiritual awakening. The moment you stop running from yourself and begin to understand that the peace you were seeking outside has always lived within. The journey into solitude used to feel like exile, a void you tried to fill with noise, validation, or endless movement. But now, solitude feels like home. You've met the parts of yourself you once buried: the pain, the doubt, the hidden memories, and instead of rejecting them, you've embraced them with compassion. You've looked into the mirror of your own consciousness and said, "I see you, and I accept you." That is shadow integration, the core of Jung's psychology and the soul of spirituality. It's the recognition that healing isn't about becoming flawless. It's about befriending every fragment of who you are. When you begin to enjoy your own presence, something miraculous happens. The constant craving for validation dissolves. You no longer need someone else's attention to feel alive. You stop measuring your worth by how many people notice you or how much noise fills your days. Instead, you become aware of the quiet rhythm of your inner being, the slow, sacred heartbeat of your own existence. You realize that solitude isn't emptiness, but space. The space where your soul can breathe, where intuition speaks, and where divine wisdom whispers truths the world is too loud to hear. This stage of spiritual growth doesn't announce itself with celebration. It doesn't look like victory or feel like revelation. It unfolds softly, like dawn light through a curtain, subtle, yet undeniable. You catch yourself at peace on a Sunday morning, unbothered by the silence that once made you anxious. You sit still, and instead of reaching for your phone or the next distraction, you listen. You notice your breath, your thoughts, your presence. And in that noticing, you meet something eternal. You realize that healing was never about fixing what was broken. It was about remembering who you've always been beneath the noise. To be comfortable in solitude means you've stopped fearing your own reflection. You've learned that even your pain carries wisdom, that your past no longer holds you captive, and that silence is the purest form of truth. The person who once couldn't stand being alone is now someone who thrives in stillness. And that, in itself, is the greatest sign of spiritual awakening. You are more healed than you think, not because the world around you changed, but because you finally made peace with the world within. Have you ever found peace in being alone? Solitude isn't emptiness. It's where your soul learns to breathe. If you've experienced a moment of comfort in your own company, share it in the comments so others can be inspired by your journey. And if you're still learning to embrace solitude, comment below. I'm ready to find peace within, so we can walk this path of healing and spiritual awakening together. 2. Triggers losing power. When the situations that once shattered you now only stir a quiet wave within, it's no longer a coincidence, it's a revelation of spiritual growth. You may still feel that brief ache when something brushes against an old wound, but it doesn't drown you anymore. It moves through you, and then it's gone. That's the soul's way of showing that the pain has been integrated, that the past no longer holds the authority to define your present. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And now, you're living the proof of that wisdom. The patterns that once pulled your strings are losing their power because you have stopped identifying with the story of your suffering. You've stepped into awareness of the sacred space where reaction transforms into response and chaos turns into clarity. You see, spirituality is not about becoming untouchable or emotionless. It's about reclaiming your peace from the places where you once lost it. It's about realizing that triggers are not enemies, but messengers, reminders of what still needs your compassion, not your control. When someone criticizes you, and instead of shrinking, you breathe and see their projection for what it is that's healing. When disappointment comes, and instead of despair, you remind yourself that life unfolds according to divine timing, that's maturity. The storms may still come, but you've built a foundation that doesn't collapse. You're no longer asking, "Why me?" but whispering, "What is this teaching me?" That subtle shift is where true spiritual awakening begins, when you stop chasing validation, stop rehearsing pain, and start living from inner trust. Each time you pause instead of react, you are rewriting your story. Each moment you stay calm, where you once would have broken, you are reclaiming your power from the unconscious. Healing doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It shows itself through your silence, your restraint, your ability to stand in presence without defending your worth. Your growth hides in these ordinary moments, in the grace with which you forgive, the ease with which you release, and the strength with which you stay soft in a hard world. And though you might not see it, every time you choose peace over drama, compassion over bitterness, awareness over impulse, you are living proof that your soul has evolved. This is the invisible beauty of spiritual growth. Not the absence of triggers, but the mastery over them. Not the end of emotion, but the transformation of energy. You have become conscious of the very things that once controlled you, and that consciousness itself is freedom. You are learning that healing doesn't mean forgetting the storm. It means remembering your strength. And through that quiet strength, your spirit has become untouchable. not by building walls, but by expanding beyond them. 3. Embracing paradox. You know you've reached a quiet depth of healing when you can hold contradictions inside you without falling apart. You can love someone deeply and still feel frustrated by them. You can be grateful for what you have and yet still dream of more. You can feel strong and still admit that you're uncertain. That's not weakness. It's the essence of what Carl Jung called psychological maturity, the sacred ability to be whole instead of perfect. Perfection is sterile, but wholeness is alive. It's the moment you realize that opposites can coexist in harmony, and that light can only exist because of shadow. Jung once said, "The paradox is one of our most valuable spiritual possessions, because it teaches us that inner peace doesn't come from erasing conflict, but from integrating it." There was a time when you might have thought healing meant becoming only calm, only kind, only positive. But now you understand that real healing is the ability to stand in the middle of contradiction without losing yourself. It's when you stop fighting your sadness and start listening to what it's trying to teach you. It's when you can forgive someone without denying the pain they caused. Spiritual wisdom isn't about choosing one side of life over the other. It's about seeing that both darkness and light are part of the same divine truth. The deeper you go, the more you realize that every emotion, even the painful ones, carries a message from your soul asking to be understood. Think about how far you've come. Once, you might have seen things in extremes, good or bad, success or failure, right or wrong. But now, you can breathe in the space between them. You've learned that life isn't meant to be solved like a puzzle, but embraced like a mystery. You no longer panic when uncertainty visits. You simply let it sit beside you and whisper its lessons. Jung believed that the path of awakening begins when we stop rejecting parts of ourselves. He wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And that's exactly what you've done. You've started to see your anger as passion misdirected, your fear as a signpost toward growth, your pain as a doorway to truth. When you can hold two truths at once without needing to choose, you've already stepped into mastery. You've discovered that you can be both tender and powerful, both grounded and wild, both human and divine. You've stopped chasing the illusion of being fixed because you now understand you were never truly broken. You were just learning how to hold your opposites in love. That's what Carl Jung meant by integrating the process of uniting the conscious and the unconscious, the sacred and the flawed, until they dance together as one. So when you find yourself loving and doubting, forgiving and hurting, surrendering and resisting all at once, don't rush to correct it. Just notice it. That's your soul evolving quietly, growing stronger in silence. Healing isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself with fireworks or revelation. It's the slow expansion of your capacity to hold life as it is. The moment you can say, "I am both," and feel peace in that truth, you have already touched the heart of spiritual awakening and embodied the rare spiritual wisdom that Carl Jung spent his life trying to illuminate. Comment below, "I embrace the paradox," if you're ready to find peace in life's contradictions and see how your inner growth has been quietly unfolding all along. 4. Freedom from projections. When you begin to awaken spiritually, something remarkable happens. You stop letting other people's opinions shape your reality. You no longer live under the weight of their judgments or carry their insecurities as your own. You start to see clearly where you end and others begin. As Carl Jung said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. That simple truth becomes a compass for your awakening. You recognize that when someone projects their fears onto you, it has nothing to do with your essence and everything to do with their unhealed pain. You no longer absorb their energy. You let it pass through like a wave dissolving on the shore. What once felt like a personal attack now feels like information evidence of another person's inner struggle, and you move with quiet awareness rather than emotional reactivity. This is not detachment born from indifference, but wisdom born from clarity. You start to feel when someone's words carry the vibration of their wounds. Instead of defending yourself, you remain centered. Instead of explaining your worth, you rest in it. This is the power of spiritual awakening. It refines your boundaries without hardening your heart. You realize that not every criticism deserves a response, and not every projection deserves your energy. People can only see you through the filters of their own consciousness. Their perception is not your responsibility. The more you embody this truth, the freer you become. Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." But when you see projections for what they truly are, you stop living by other people's unconscious stories and start living by your own awareness. That is emotional sovereignty, the ability to remain rooted in your own energy no matter what others send your way. True healing, as Jung taught, doesn't arrive with fanfare. It doesn't announce itself in loud transformations. It happens quietly, almost invisibly, in the moments where you would have once been triggered but now remain calm. You might still feel the old sensations rise, the pulse quickening, the urge to explain, but instead of reacting, you breathe. You witness. You choose peace over chaos. That's how you know growth has happened. Not because you stopped feeling, but because you learned how to stay centered through the feeling. Your silence becomes strength. Your boundaries become sacred. You realize that self-respect is not about building walls. It's about knowing the value of your energy and protecting it with love. Through this stage of spiritual awakening, you stop needing everyone to understand you. You stop performing for approval. The praise no longer inflates you, and the criticism no longer wounds you. You exist in a deeper rhythm now, one guided by inner truth rather than outer validation. The judgments of others no longer define your identity because you have learned to define yourself through presence, awareness, and compassion. This is freedom from projections, the kind of freedom that can't be taken away because it comes from within. It's the moment you realize you are no longer who the world told you to be. You are who your soul has always known you were. In that realization lies one of the most profound signs of hidden growth Carl Jung ever described. The awakening of a consciousness so radiant that the shadows of others can no longer touch your light. 5. Dream transformation. One of the most revealing signs of inner healing is when the tone of your dreams begins to change. You may not even realize it at first, but the chaos that once filled your nights slowly turns into calm. The fear that used to chase you becomes curiosity, and the darkness that once swallowed you starts to open into light. This is not a coincidence. It is the voice of your unconscious reorganizing itself after years of inner conflict. According to Carl Jung, dreams are the purest expressions of the soul. They are messages written in the language of symbols, showing us what words cannot express. When your dreams begin to shift from chaos to exploration, it means that something deep inside you has started to trust life again. Perhaps you used to dream of running away, of being lost, of facing shadows you could not escape. But now, instead of running, you stand your ground. You walk through that same dark forest, not as a victim, but as a seeker. You enter the same house that once terrified you and discover that behind its locked doors are rooms filled with warmth and light. These changes are not just about the dreams themselves. They are evidence that your psyche is healing, that your soul has accepted its own wholeness. This is what true spiritual growth looks like: silent but profound, invisible but powerful. It happens beneath the surface, as your unconscious mind learns to live in harmony with your conscious self. Healing does not always mean that the pain disappears. As Jung said, healing is not about curing, it's about making whole. You may still remember your wounds, but they no longer define you. The energy that once created nightmares now gives birth to symbols of renewal. The same emotions that once overwhelmed you now become guides, leading you toward deeper understanding. In this new stage of spirituality, your dreams become a sacred classroom where the soul teaches through imagery and feeling. They reflect your progress more honestly than your waking mind ever could. When you dream of reconciling with someone who once hurt you, or when an old fear no longer makes you panic, it's your unconscious celebrating its peace. The dream world becomes a mirror of your inner harmony, showing that your spiritual awakening has reached a new depth. You no longer need to fight or flee. You are able to observe, to feel, and to let go. The boundaries between darkness and light begin to dissolve because you now understand they are both part of the same truth. Your unconscious is not your enemy. It is your oldest companion. And as you heal, it starts to trust you again. The chaos in your dreams settles because your inner world no longer needs to scream to be heard. The fears that once haunted you now transform into symbols of wisdom. You might wake up remembering a dream where you fly, swim in clear water, or walk through golden light. These are not random images, but the language of your soul telling you you are safe now. This transformation in your dream landscape is a reflection of your spiritual growth. It shows that the layers of your being, body, mind, and spirit, are beginning to move in the same rhythm. The more peaceful your inner world becomes, the more harmony you will see both in your dreams and your waking life. The night no longer hides your fears. It reveals your healing. And that silent transformation, often unnoticed, is one of the clearest signs that you are far more healed than you think. Leave your like and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any powerful insights that awaken your dreams into transformation. Comment below, "I am transforming through every dream," to affirm your journey toward hidden healing and spiritual growth. 6. Peace with the shadow. You've stopped fighting your darker impulses, and that's one of the clearest signs you're far more healed than you think. There was a time when you might have seen jealousy, anger, or selfishness as proof that something was wrong with you. You tried to suppress them, hide them, or pray them away, thinking that being spiritual meant being spotless. But real healing, as Carl Jung's spiritual wisdom reminds us, isn't about erasing the darkness. It's about embracing it. Until you make the unconscious conscious, Jung once said, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. When you stop denying those hidden parts of yourself and begin to understand them, you stop being ruled by them. That's when your shadow starts transforming from a prison into a source of profound insight. The moment you can observe your anger without being consumed by it, when you can feel jealousy without letting it poison your peace, you reclaim a power that's deeper than self-control. It's self-awareness. You begin to see that every emotion has a purpose, that your anger often points to your boundaries, your jealousy reveals your suppressed desires, and even your selfishness teaches you to protect your energy. Through this understanding, what once felt like weakness slowly becomes wisdom. The fire that used to burn you now lights your path. The emotions that used to shame you now show you where you still need love. Jung believed that there is no coming to consciousness without pain. And through that pain, you've begun to awaken the light that was hidden within your own darkness. You've also noticed that life no longer triggers you the way it once did. The people or situations that used to send you into spirals of self-doubt or emotional chaos now meet a calmer, wiser version of you. You no longer react. You reflect. You don't rush to prove your goodness or defend your worth, because you've realized that true peace doesn't come from appearing perfect, but from being whole. That's the essence of spiritual awakening, the quiet understanding that you can hold both light and shadow without rejecting either. You stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking, "What is this teaching me?" That subtle shift is the mark of inner maturity, the moment when your shadow no longer controls you because it no longer needs to. Carl Jung taught that every person contains both divine light and sacred darkness, and the integration of the two is what leads to transformation. As you learn to make peace with your shadow, you begin to see how everything you once judged in yourself was actually guiding you toward wisdom. Your sensitivity becomes compassion. Your guilt becomes empathy. Your past mistakes turn into understanding. Even your wounds begin to glow softly with meaning. This harmony between what you once loved and what you once feared within yourself is the very definition of healing. You may not have realized it yet, but your quiet acceptance, your calm response, and your ability to find light in what once scared you, all of that means you're already more healed, more awake, and more whole than you ever thought possible. 7. Renewed meaning. You begin to sense that life has quietly come back to life within you, not through any grand achievement, but through the sacred simplicity of being. There's a calm pulse of meaning behind even the smallest actions: when you breathe, when you listen, when you smile for no reason at all. This is the silent sign of deep healing. You are no longer chasing happiness. You are embodying it. Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." And in this awakening, you realize that spirituality isn't about escaping reality, but falling in love with it again. You start to find joy, not in doing more, but in being more present. There's a quiet richness in washing a cup, feeling the warmth of sunlight, or simply existing without needing anything to prove your worth. The noise of the world fades, and a deeper rhythm begins to move through you. A rhythm that feels ancient, peaceful, and alive. The more you awaken, the more you notice that purpose is no longer something you must chase. It begins to flow naturally when you create from the heart, when you serve without needing recognition, when you connect with others and feel the pulse of shared humanity. The divine is no longer distant. It lives through your hands, your voice, your breath. You can feel the invisible harmony between your inner world and the outer one, as if life itself has become a mirror reflecting your healed energy. Jung believed the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And now that truth lives inside you, you no longer seek to become someone else. You simply allow your truest essence to unfold. In this deepened state of awareness, patterns start to appear where before you saw only randomness. Synchronicities begin to weave through your days, small moments that seem too perfectly timed to be coincidence. You think of someone, and they call. You feel lost, and the right message appears in front of you. You sense that something, somewhere, is guiding you. This isn't wishful thinking. It's the universe responding to your healed vibration. You are finally in resonance with life itself. The language of the divine has always been timing, alignment, and intuition, and now you are fluent in it. You start to understand that divine timing was never working against you. It was shaping you. Every detour, heartbreak, and silence was part of the sacred choreography of your becoming. Jung said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain," and now that truth feels real. The pain that once felt unbearable has turned into wisdom. The moments that once broke, you have become the very soil where compassion grew. You no longer curse your past. You honor it, for it built the foundation of your awakening. You see how the pieces fit, how everything had meaning, and how your spirit was never abandoned, only refined. Now, even the ordinary feels miraculous. You find beauty in quiet mornings, depth in simple conversations, and gratitude in the smallest details. The world hasn't suddenly become easier, but you have become softer, wiser, freer. You are no longer surviving. You are creating, connecting, and existing with awareness. You can feel the universe, or consciousness itself, breathing through you, guiding you with every beat of your heart. This is what real healing feels like, not perfection, but presence. Not constant happiness, but quiet peace. Not needing to prove that you're healed, because your very existence radiates it. You realize that spirituality is not somewhere you go. It is what you are when you remember your wholeness. Life begins to feel sacred again, and that is the ultimate sign of your spiritual awakening. We hope this reflection on finding renewed meaning through hidden healing has inspired you to see your journey with fresh eyes. If you're ready to rediscover purpose and align your life with deeper spiritual wisdom, comment below, "I'm renewed." Your engagement helps us share more insights that awaken growth and understanding within you. Sometimes healing doesn't look like joy or clarity. It looks like peace where there used to be pain, silence where there used to be chaos. You're more healed than you think, and every quiet step forward is proof of your unseen growth. If this message resonated with you, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you won't miss our upcoming videos about inner transformation and the hidden power within you.